Do you think first impressions are important in making a relationship?
I think they can be. I think they're not always accurate.
They're first impressions. So you build your opinion based on what you see first. It's not that can't change later, but it's all you have to go on in the beginning.
First impressions are important in the plot of Pride and Prejudice. Like Susan said, first impressions are subject to change. Like in Lizzie's first impression of Darcy, she saw him as a very conceited, arrogant person, but in the end she found out that he was actually a very generous, kind person.
Like Anne said, first impressions aren't always accurate. In Pride and Prejudice, Lizzie saw Wickham for a trustworthy, nice, generous man. But by the end of the story, she saw him for who he truly was, a conniving man who wasn't trustworthy.
Have you ever had a first impression that turned out to be incredibly off, good or bad?
Well, I think every encounter that you have a first impression. So you're going to have every kind. You're going to have good ones, bad ones, or ones that are accurate. So I think that, there's always a first for every situation.
Yes, but more so, I think people's first impression of me, and then it turns out that it's incorrect, mainly based on my profession.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, as a mortician and a funeral director, sometimes people will meet me, and when they ask me what I do, their whole opinion of me changes. Sometimes they get scared or skittish, so it goes from a normal, relationship. They're happy to meet me, shaking my hand. They find out what I do, they take their hand away, they get reserved, drawn in, and then as they get to know me more by talking to me, then they become friendly and more cordial again.
Yes. We had an intern several years ago who, when she came, was dressed a little tardy and kind of inappropriate for the workplace. And I don't know if she really was aware of how it appeared. But my first impression of her wasn't very good because of the way she was dressed in the work environment. But later I did find out that she was quite accomplished and quite thoughtful and very intelligent, and she's proved to be a wonderful professional in our field, and is a colleague that I am still in contact with regularly.
Greg explained how people took a bad first impression of him because of his job as a mortician. This is similar to how the Bingley sisters disliked the Bennets because of their relations to the Gardiners who live in Cheapside. They do not like how the Gardiners live in a lower-class area in London. Susan explained how she took a bad first impression of an intern she had because she was not dressed appropriately for the workplace. In the novel, Lydia Bennet acts inappropriately to gain attention and engages in an elopement with Wickham, ruining her family's reputation.
Have you ever had a first impression that turned out to be incredibly off?
Yes. When I met my husband as one of my employers, he was my boss, I couldn't stand him. I thought he was awful. I thought he was mean. I was also very young, and I didn't like him. But then we became friends. I realized his meanness was really him just wanting his employees to be the best they could be and make the most money they could in doing their job. So once I saw it as that, I realized he was really looking out for our benefit. And then we became friends, and then we ended up getting married.
Have you ever been given a bad first impression that turned out to be true?
Yeah, lots of times.
Do you have any examples you can think of?
I really liked Mom right away when I met her, and she is a really good person.
In the novel Pride and Prejudice, Lizzie's first impression of Darcy was that he was conceited and arrogant. Throughout the novel, she learned his true personality. She realized that he was actually a trustworthy, kind person. This is similar to Anne's first impression of her husband. When she first met her husband, he was her boss, and she disliked the way he acted. Later on, she realized he was just acting like that for the best interest of his employees. They then became friends and got married. In the novel Pride and Prejudice, Jane and Bingley both have good first impressions of one another. Throughout the novel, the first impression they had of one another stayed true, and in the end of the novel, they got married. This is similar to what Michael said about his wife. He always liked his wife. His first impression of her was a good one, and that stayed true, and they got married as well.
Do you think first impressions are important in making a relationship?
No.
Can you elaborate?
A first impression doesn't mean anything. It's just that. It's a first impression. It's based solely on the physical. Relationships are more built on, psychological, metaphysical, anything like that. A physical appearance is nothing, means nothing towards a meaningful relationship.
In the novel, everybody liked Wickham because they liked how he had good manners and was very attractive. In the end, they found out that he was actually a very mean, manipulative person, and they did not like him in the end.
Have you ever been given a bad first impression that turned out to be true?
Yes. It was my frenemy.